All right, good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming. And Shantell, what an amazing performance. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
This was, I got to tell you, we came and visited South by last year. Ariana stepped, and I came and visited this location. We stepped in here and we imagined what this event could look like. And it's just so cool to see this all come together. And so I want to really thank the entire team that helped bring this together. And it's just been a really cool, last day and a half. So I'm really excited for this conversation that's about to unfold. We touched on a lot of these topics, I think, in the first session. It really is, I think, an incredible moment in time as we look at the landscape in front of us related to this kind of converging world of virtual experiences. What's artificial and what's real. But what we know is that humans are desiring real life experiences more than ever. And this is such a wonderful sort of moment, I think, for everyone on this stage because of where they intersect, right, in this place and time. And Populous, I've been with the firm it'll be 21 years in July, and it's been really cool to see how much we've changed. Michael's similarly, over 2 decades, right, within the practice. We've seen so much evolution and change. But the amazing thing is that people remain the same fundamentally, right? We have this, part of our human DNA of wanting to be together, right, to share these experiences. Jonathan talked about these cathedrals this morning. And the way that the places and the environments that we shape at Populous, we have this really great privilege to do so. They're cathedrals for memories, right? They're cathedrals for these amazing emotional experiences, the things that Kuzi does, right? The things that Shantell does. These places where people can gather, right? They can enjoy entertainment, they can enjoy sports, they can enjoy exposition, right? But they are cathedrals, right? In many ways. And that's really fundamentally such a wonderful thing, when we play a role in bringing people together for these memories that they take for their entire lives. So that's what we're going to touch on today a little bit, is this future of live, right? And what does that mean? And each of us on this panel have a great perspective on that. And so I'm going to start by just kind of going through a little bit of a round of introduction. But Shantell, I'm going to start with you. A little bit about you, Shantell, an artist, philosopher, cultural facilitator, right? We all got to see that live and in action just a moment ago. But Shantell's an internationally recognized visual artist, known for distinctive black and white line drawings that explore identity storytelling. Storytelling is something I hope we touch on today a bit, each of us. And human connection. Her work spans fine art, large-scale installations, institutional exhibitions, and collaborations with major cultural institutions and global brands. Experiences that spark reflection and connection. I love that. Jonathan, your last name is hard to pronounce, I have to say.
It's basically your company name.
It is our company name, and that's why Jonathan is on our stage. Vlassopulos, okay? So serendipitously, and this is why we invited you, Jonathan. But thank you for being here. And Jonathan is a senior media, entertainment, technology executive. You're going to love to hear his background here in a moment. Executive, investor, operator, three decades of experience building, scaling global consumer platforms across music, gaming, television, mobile, immersive media. So Jonathan was global. He was, first I'll start with the CEO of Napster. All of you remember Napster, of course. And I remember Napster when I was in college, in studio at 2 a.m., listening to music, and global head of music at Roblox, amazingly cool, where he built and scaled the company's global music and media partnership in business, and also is involved with Universal Music Hotels and Leisure, if I got that correct, which is really great. And so Jonathan's going to bring a wonderful perspective to this conversation, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Kuzi. So Kuzi joined us last year, and Kuzi and I were able to be on a panel session, so we get to do it again, which is great, Kuzi, and it's wonderful to see you. So Kuzi is from Calgary. And he's a dynamic singer, performer known for his commanding stage presence, engaging live performances. His shows combine powerful vocal delivery, choreography, crowd interaction, and creating an energetic experience that draws audiences into the performance. And Kuzi was just signed to Universal Music in Canada.
Hey.
So we're proud to be alongside Kuzi on this journey in a small way, but we are super proud of you. So that's really awesome. And lastly, Michael Lockwood on the end of the stage here. So Michael's a senior principal with our practice, and he leads our convention and exposition segment for Populous. Nearly 2 decades into a career designing buildings, places that draw people together, and has built a reputation for rallying client stakeholders and innovative solutions through collaborative design processes. Work begins with listening and interpreting the many voices involved in shaping a place and translating them through design that performs, inspires, and leaves a lasting legacy. And I'm proud to call him a colleague and a good friend. And the one thing I will say about Michael is when he goes into a room and he starts a design conversation, it's one of the most magical things to watch. I have to say that. And the way that he draws ideas and the way that he creates stakeholder consensus around ideas and rallies people is one of his greatest attributes. And I'm really excited to have you bring your perspective today, because I think everyone on this stage brings a little bit of something different. But I love the way that we're going to be able to talk about this in terms of an artist perspective, from a platform perspective, Jonathan, and from a built environment perspective, because they're all interconnected. So I'm going to pause right there, and Shantell, I want to throw it to you to begin this conversation today. First and foremost, again, that was really awesome to see that performance. Dean talked about that. He was like, "You're gonna love Shantell. She has this incredible, sort of performance and style." But we talked a little bit yesterday on our walk, and it was kind of cool to listen to the way that you perceive the world, and actually, Wilson Smith and I were standing over there, and he was like, "She's got the coolest tattoo. It says Y on her arm." How do you see the world, and when you ask that question, how does that influence kind of your thinking?
I think it also comes from that place of curiosity, of asking why. Why are you doing anything that you do? Why are we even here? Why are you doing that with your time? Why are you saying yes to that? And it's interesting, when you travel internationally, you're like, oh, why is in English, but it could also be in other languages, and does this mean something else in the other words and languages, and and it's like, maybe I should have got why in a different language, and you can kind of peel the layers off of that. But I think fundamentally we know why we're doing something, and we have internal compasses that can lead us and can let us know this is a yes, this is a no, this is actually something that ethically and morally is good, this is something that can do good. And I think we have that compass within us, and the why is what can help tune it and direct it and make sure that it's kind of calibrated to the place and the baseline it should be at.
Yeah, that's awesome. Kuzi, I wanted to ask you, you've been on a journey, and you started in Calgary, which I want to tie this together with Michael as well too. But you're a young artist, up and coming, right? You've kind of gone through a process of growing, but learning how to perform, right? And going on kind of a journey of how you connect with audiences in a really unique and dynamic way. But I wonder if you could just talk to us a little bit about your journey, a little bit about your path, and sort of where you're headed.
Hello. Hi. Yeah, my name's Kuzi. I'm an R&B singer. Originally from Zimbabwe, but through just the trials and tribulations of life, moved around a lot. Spent some time in New York, spent some time in Pennsylvania, spent some time in Toronto, and then now I ultimately call Calgary my home. I started making music as a rapper, but we don't talk about those dark, dark days of Kuzi rapping. It was not it. But ultimately found my voice through singing, especially through love songs. I found that it was something that was able to connect with everybody regardless of language. So whether you spoke Japanese, whether you spoke Spanish, French, English, you knew what love was. And when you felt the love song and you heard it for the first time, you actually felt, oh, I can feel comfortable with this. So that's kind of my calling, is to start making R&B music. Now, throughout kind of my career as well, from the live perspective, I found that love in a scenario with a live performance just creates core memories. It creates something that stands the test of time. I'm sure we all know a time when we went to a concert with our friends, or we went out and had a good time. That song that was playing, maybe it was Drake, if you're Canadian, shout out to Canada. But there was always a soundtrack to something going on with those pivotal life moments, and when you were able to experience those in a concert scenario, that really just warms the heart, creates those deep connections and bonds between people. So that's kind of what I like to chase when I'm on stage, creating the songs and do my little dancey-do here and there too.
So you used a word that that we really respond to, love. And I don't know if Kat Jones is still in the audience here, but there's Kat. One of the things that when we became Populous as a brand, we talked a lot about, and Kat introduced to us, was this concept of you should talk about love. You should talk about the love of a human experience. You should talk about love when people experience one of your projects or places, and it's really fundamental and core to the work. And so, thank you for bringing that into the conversation. Talking a little bit, staying on the theme of music, Jonathan, I wanted to ask you. Your career has been really central. Music has been very central, right? Back to the Napster days, and certainly with Roblox as well too. I'd love to hear a little bit of your origin and how your origin story and how you approached your work with Napster and then with Roblox as well too.
Sure. So, and happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone as well. I'm wearing green somewhere, but not black. So I think, for me, I'm about to get a tattoo. I haven't got a tattoo yet, but I'm going to get curiosity, and I was also deciding what language to get it in. So it was interesting. So I think the theme for me has kind of been, I used to be a DJ a long time ago in the 90s, club and radio in the UK and Asia, and that led me into the music business. So I think through my career, kind of curiosity and curation probably have been the common themes, and bringing people together. So I've thrown parties, I've kind of curated experiences digitally, physically, and I think sitting between two talented people is where I like to be generally. So I think it's about, from the early Napster days where we had analog. I started in the music business in Asia in the 90s, and we had those weird things that are now used as coffee, where you put your drinks on CDs, right? So it was in that era. And then had that transition to digital. And we were working how, the digital means could connect people. We had in the 90s, which still rings true now, the 3 Cs, content, commerce, and community, which still, I think, ring true. So I think through that journey, through Napster and Roblox, and I was at Endemol as a TV producer, we did a lot of interactive television where you could text with American Idol and vote on Deal or No Deal, and I did live shows, and I was a wannabe actor with immersive theater. So all of these, I think, came together when I was at Roblox, and we worked with artists like a Kuzi. And I think the notion of being able to go to a physical venue when you're going on tour, you hit 1,000 people, or you hit the bar in Shoreditch, with 100 people, right? And it's that connection where hopefully the people are having that memory. You had the cathedral of memories, right? So they're having that experience, which is super unique. And I think the experience, I talked a lot about the future of live entertainment over the last 6 or 7 years. I think when you've got the little, 1 centimeter view of Coldplay and the $300 seats at Wembley Stadium, I think that type of experience is fine. But the future of live, I think, is this much more intimate, experiential connection with the artist and the fan. And I think the evolution of physical spaces melding as kind of hotels and member clubs are starting to integrate live experiences. You've got sports arenas starting to integrate, again, music and live experiences within it. Creates these much more memorable experiences where fans can connect. So two experiences. So at the Roblox side, we worked with Lil Nas X, this, at the time, quite small artist. He'd just done Old Town Road. And we wanted to have a way for him to express himself, because again, with music, you express yourself generally in a song. But I'm sure if we work together, we could come up with a movie, we come up with a game, right? You think in 3D. When you're thinking about love and what it means, you express it as a song. So giving the musical artist a 3D palette to paint in Roblox, we work with 21 Pilots and Zara Larsson and KSI and all these different artists. And KSI, I remember He's going, can I have it? He's from London. He's going, can I have like double-decker buses and minis that would go around London? It's like he was building this whole world. And 21 Pilots, if you've ever been to one of their live shows, it's the most incredible live show. So I think allowing people to kind of connect in these, not physical spaces, but virtual spaces. And my kids during COVID were getting together for Zara Larsson, and they were sitting on a virtual speaker in this sort of Swedish, kind of country house with flamingos everywhere. And one of her friends, we were in Nashville, and one of her friends was from California, and they were sitting together in a virtual space, but connected. And I think, Surgeon General says like loneliness is a big problem, right? It's like smoking a pack of cigarettes, right? So bringing people together virtually, I think has that connection that you can get physically, which you can't. Lil Nas X would have to fly around the world, 400 times to reach the 30, 40 million people he did online. So I think the panel topic was, is it either or? So the general thesis is it's both. And I think it's creating that connection. Like there's a club in London, I'm connected to, Coco, and those intimate experiences, it's a 1,500 cap venue plus a members club and 2 mini venues in the members club. There's Ellen's a jazz club and the Fly Tower. And those little experiences, Jean-Baptiste is doing a residency at the jazz club. Those experiences where you're 100 people with Jean-Baptiste for a residency, those are the ones you never forget. So I'm excited as we talk about the panel, but the change now, all the worlds where it's not focusing on the different industry types, it's not focusing like with music of radio, you drive to the show and you listen to radio in the car, you're at the show and that's live entertainment, then you go back and listen to Spotify. It's refocusing on the fan, the customer, and delivering an experience that really connects, again, the fans together, the artist and the fan, and that's going to open up massive economic experiences and really amazing social experiences for all of us.
Yeah, no, that's so wonderful. And I think it's in many ways a great segue to you, Michael, because I know we've talked a lot about the evolution of your world, especially when we think about these amazing places of gathering in exposition, right, and convention, types of venues. But the way that entertainment is really becoming so much more present in these places, and when you think about artists, when you think about content creation, you think about all the things that Jonathan just talked about, and Shantell and Kuzi, maybe for our audience, give a little bit of perspective on how the world is changing and what you're seeing in terms of trends that are taking place.
Sure. I wanted to go back to the heart of us, Populous. Kat, great to see you. We design the places where people love to be together, and I think what's interesting as architects, we are designing places where people love to be together, but the actual most important part of that statement is that people love to be together, period. And I feel like when you look across all of our typologies, and what excites me most about Populous is that when we bring our best to every experience of the human condition, no matter the typology, no matter the place, there might not be a typology there. When we really understand why people are coming together, what is the why? As designers and architects, we're able to step back and understand that the human experience is consistent. I think what's the most important trend now, I think we're here and certainly into the future, is that people aren't willing to lower their expectations anymore, I don't think. I think they want to be entertained all the time. I don't say that lightly. It's not like people want entertainment, but people's expectations, rightfully so, I think are very high, and we need to meet that expectation. And sometimes that means the building or the vessel or the place needs to disappear and just let the event happen, let people connect, let people fall in love with each other and fall in love with the experience. So I think understanding the why is incredibly important. For convention and exhibition centers, we've had a lot of success because I think if you look back decades, and maybe to Jonathan's point about stadiums from decades ago, there were so many things in people's lives they were willing to just set aside and forget. There were a lot of forgettable moments, and you've heard us talk a lot about let's make memories. And so I don't think people are willing to forget 1 second of their day or 1 minute of their day, right? Everybody wants every moment to be special, and that's incredibly important. So for convention and exhibitions, for example, they used to be these forgettable days. Like I would have to go to a convention for a day or days, right? And you would sort of set your life aside. We're way beyond that. So when we understand that people are coming to a place and every second is incredibly valuable, right? It's not that we're entertaining them. We're just appreciating the fact that every moment is special. And so what part do we play in those moments as designers? And again, sometimes the architecture needs to step way back. And I think when we understand that and we let the artists shine and let the people shine, then we've done our job. And I think that's where we are now, and I'm really excited about where we're going to go in the future.
No, it's such a great perspective. I'm really excited too about like, you know, just how these future forms of entertainment continue to change as well too. And so when you think about kind of the vessels, right, but then you think about the different forms of entertainment and just storytelling, right, that's happening. Shantell, I want to kind of throw it back to you because I think one of the great things that we're seeing right now in the industry is a lot of experimentation, right? There's a lot of experimentation around how do we connect with audiences differently. I've been really struck by watching Fred again, for instance, in a lot of his shows right now in the UK. And there's so much experimentation that's happening, right? The collaborations with different artists. But I also want to talk, Shantell, in your world, you know, you're kind of in a different realm, like of entertainment. It's sort of like a hybrid. What inspires you, and what are some things that you think, you know, we're going to see more and more of, kind of in you know, your place?
I think a little bit if it's just going back to basics. So, you know, if I ask the audience if you can draw, put your hand up. Okay, that's like 20%. So, you know, even just things like that. So we have a room here full of adults who all have jobs and pay bills and, you know, might have dependents. And, you know, something that everyone in this room did as a child, which is pick up a pen or a pencil and draw, that allowed you to extract the inside to the outside and allowed you to calibrate yourself to the world and allowed you to get your emotions out. And something you did quite naturally and creatively, at some point it gets trained out of us. And, you know, you're a 10, 11-year-old and you start to believe, I can't draw and my sibling or my friend can. And, you know, my teacher or my parents said, this is what a house looks like or this is what a car looks like. And now I further believe that I can't and somebody else can. And then we're slowly trained in that creativity, that kind of natural ability out of ourselves till the point where a room of adults that believe that we can't do something that we could do as a 2-year-old. So of course we can all draw in this room. Not that you all should be artists, but there's a natural ability within creativity within all of us. And so within my work, I'm trying to, in a way, not give permission for people to do things that they don't need permission to do, but encourage them to do the things that there is a benefit through. And so encouraging walking, breathing, drawing, meditating, these are all themes that I interact and weave throughout my work as a way of, I'm using drawing as the main foundation, but through this drawing you can walk on it and you can be present, or you can breathe, or you can close your eyes, or you can meditate, or you can be present. All of these things are things that we naturally have the ability to do, that we don't need permission to do, which will ultimately uplift our lives and everyone around us. And so I definitely think the future is more of that. It's coming back to the basics, coming back to the beginning, coming back to those very simple things that have a huge impact on your life. You know, how often do you give a walk at your full attention? How often do you sit and kind of breathe? How often do you pick up a pen and draw? You know, and today I encourage you to all do that and believe that you can, because the more that we think that we can, because we can, the more creativity we have and the more we're feeding that compass and the more we understand the why. And now you can see that these are all a chain of a linked events that make us a kind of happier, more connective, more creative population, which is better for society as a whole.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
I was going to say, I think, I love that, and I think everyone's looking for more and more unique experiences, and what you just presented is very unique. Everyone coming together, maybe we draw together, then we lay it on the floor and we dance, or whatever it happens to be, and people come away going, what did you do last night? So I drew it, then I danced on the drawing, right? So, and then that brings people together around an experience that's unique, which I think, so the whole notion, I call it participatory media. And I think...
Of course, they built a box to put it in, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So I think the notion of, you know, where, and over the years, I think in television, like, we did the live TV shows, and then we had game shows, and you could participate again in the shows. You weren't just watching the television. You could kind of, it was weird, like you were watching it, you're used to it being recorded, and then you could actually text in and participate in the show. And I still, when I go back to London, like some of the Amazon Live, you can go in, and if you actually like text in suddenly you're sitting at home and it's like, hey, John said that's a really good idea, and you're like on air and it's kind of messing with the people. So I think the notion of things being live and participatory, people are getting used to again. Obviously the UGC community and all the creator economy. So I think as you start to integrate into live experiences and into so thinking about the whole experience as a communal experience that you can take beyond the venue. So before the show, it's a classic thing. Like most ticketed events, you go and as soon as you leave the show, you've lost the fan, right? And then you've got to find the fan again. So I think that the movement again is around this sort of super fandom, where whether it's you getting people to draw, or all the other people who want to draw and do experiences, and how can they all become a fan community and a tribe, and like for Kuzi fans, how do we connect with the Kuzi fans, not just at the show, but what are they doing after the show and before the show, and what is the common thread that connects them before the venue, after the venue. And so what we did for 21 Pilots, you could choose the set list, and then before the show happened, you could hang out. Then we did like live meet and greets and virtual meet and greets. And so that notion, I think, again, like with the Swift tour, the obviously biggest tour in history, but the economic value, again, of all the Swifties, like in Philadelphia, it hit it was the first ever macro indicator, right? It raised hotels for the first time in Philadelphia. So I think it's connecting all the people around the experiences where they're not just going on a one-off, and that's why I think members clubs as a theme and branded residencies, like looking at that. So the branded members clubs are the same size worldwide as live music, but with a 50th of the audience. So I think it's how can you have not just one-time experiences, whether it's a hotel or a venue, but how do you create that community conference experience there?
And can I add to that? I think also being live is being present, and all the things I mentioned you can do for free, and all the things you mentioned, maybe there's a cost to it, like members and Swifty, and like there's huge financial, but I think there's also things that we can encourage people to do where it doesn't cost you a penny, it only costs you an investment of your time.
No, 100%, and I think that's the notion of the superfan stuff. So some of it is ticketed, but the community together is free. So that's just you connecting and finding. And I think it needs platforms and people with vision to understand that all those people together can, it's the whole K-pop, right, with the BTS army. If you direct them in one direction, it's all free. They'll do whatever you want to do, and they love connecting, and Demon Hunters at the Oscars. So I think it's those superfan communities, whether it's anime or music or film or art, Banksy inspiring people. So I think it's not always paid, but I think from a monetization perspective, in terms of venue owners and cities, there is an economic opportunity. I live in Nashville, and the whole east side of the river we're developing, which is going to double the footprint of Nashville. So it's 60 acres of fresh dirt. So bringing a kind of family side of Nashville in addition to Broadway, it's again storytelling. So what is like the amazing Ariana, like in terms of storytelling, what is Nashville, right? So a lot of people move to Nashville because the TV show Nashville, right? But what is the reason that you want to come to Nashville? What does it mean? Is it the country music? Is it the friendly Southern hospitality, the food, the weather, the city, the live art, et cetera, et cetera. So I think starting to bring people together around stories is free, but obviously it has a massive economic value for cities and tourism and venues and the future of how businesses are built. It's not one-off transactions, but sort of this communal club membership future.
Yeah, it's very holistic. I want to come back to Nashville in a moment, but I want to, Kuzi, I want to ask you a few things because Jonathan talked about this participation. Shantell talked about this as well in terms of this participation, right, between entertainer and audience. And one of the things I love about your shows is they're very, there's a lot of participation, right? It's something that you believe in. And I think there's this incredible sort of relationship between the stage, the audience, the atmosphere. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, just from an artist perspective, how those elements are important. Because we're always trying to design the places, right, that mediate those experiences and bring them together. But from an artist perspective, I'd love to hear you sort of discuss that relationship.
Yeah, I think it's the reason and the why, really, as an artist, when you get to be in the room with the people that share your ideology of it. So for me, all of my lovers who love to love, when we're all together and we get to kind of sing and dance all of our songs, we can be vulnerable and we can be present. It does get tough because some of the spaces are molded for having different shows show up. So sometimes it might be a comedy show that could be there. It might be an opera house where there is opera. And then it might be now Kuzi shows up with his drummer who's beating the drums as hard as possible and still trying to create that environment so everyone can feel welcome and feel vulnerable into that aspect. I think especially in an attention economy that we're in right now, which is like the buzzword that we see from the music side the most, in that you're fighting with TikTok, you're fighting with Instagram, you're fighting with all of these different platforms, but when you finally get into the room with your people, you just want to be with your people. You want to make sure that they can feel connected, they can feel engaged, whether they're front row, whether they're 30th row, all the way at the back. Regardless of the amount that they're spending, they're getting that time. They're getting that energy that they wanted to receive. So I think that's one of the key parts in creating a good live environment, is paying attention to the time that people are giving you and making sure that they can too have fun. From my side, I like to lean into the fact that I'm not the best dancer. So I'll do my dance, and I'll make it an environment where I might show up looking very presentable, very cool, very suave, but at the end of this, I'm 2 towels deep, I lost 5 water bottles, and now I'm a hot mess. Because why? We just wanted to have fun. And I think that's the overall encompassing theme there for those moments.
I love that. Michael, I want to go back to you. You know, you've worked on some awesome projects right here in Texas. You're a resident Texan. A lot of people don't know that. But you've worked on the San Antonio Convention Center. We have a project down the road in Houston. You know, I know a project that's near and dear to you is actually the work in Calgary, the BMO Center. You know, it's funny because last night, Kuzi and I were talking a little bit about Calgary and the BMO Center and how there's the opportunity for to bring to life pockets of space, and how important it is, you know, for these are large buildings, right? Oftentimes that you're embarking on, but how important it is to think about the moments, right? And how we can activate those moments. I wonder if you could share a little bit of some insight there.
Sure. So the BMO Center in Calgary, the convention center, our client was the Calgary Stampede, which, if you've not heard, it's the greatest outdoor show on earth. It's 1 million people in 10 days. So the site for our project was literally right in the middle of their park. So we had this very technical challenge of designing a convention center expansion. And there were a number of things that we had to consider. When the Stampede is happening, it's the largest music festival in Canada. So people think of it as a rodeo, but there are so many music events happening, outdoor stages, tents, permanent venues. And so one of the things that we did is, as part of our process, we told the client, we said, hey, we're not going to pick up a pen. We're not going to draw one thing until we go to the Stampede. I lasted 9 days. It's a lot. It's so much fun, and it's a lot. I think it's the only 10 days that Canadians have fun for the whole year. Sorry, Canadian friends.
Apart from Kuzi shows.
No, but it's such an intense amount of fun. And so once we experienced that as a design team, then we were able to pick up a pen and say, like, okay, I'm starting to understand what's going on here. So literally the convention center, and I won't bore you with convention center design, but we were able to stack all the necessary spaces vertically to open up as much of the ground as possible. So the client thought that they were going to lose valuable real estate at the ground plane, because they make all their money at the ground plane, right? All the events that are happening in the live entertainment. So while we were solving this very complex convention center design for international conventions, we certainly had a programmatic aspect to that. We were able to do it in a way to free up over an acre of open space on our piece of property, and so we maximized the client's revenue possibilities. So I think in the last panel it was mentioned farmers markets, musical events. So we created a space for programmatic activity that the client didn't think they would ever get. So they thought that they had to build this big box, right, that most people are not going to like. That's the world that I live in mostly. But to understand the beauty of how people can come together in and around convention centers, I always say most of the folks that experience convention centers, they won't actually go inside the door. So how do we affect their life positively? And a lot of it is through creating moments, creating experiences. Architecture and design certainly has a component to that, but I don't want to depend just on architecture. And I'll flip on the other side of the world. When we worked on the Sydney Convention Center in Australia, again, the state government was so afraid that this new giant convention center was going to negatively impact their city. And we did the opposite. We created a space for families. Right in front of the building, there are fountains, there are parks, there are running trails and biking paths and restaurants and all these things. And I love these photographs we have now. It's been 10 years now. But photographs of the convention center where just life is happening, and the convention center lives in the background. So understanding really what matters at the end of the day, what everybody wants, that's how we go through our design process. And Calgary was fascinating because there was so much to pull from a design point of view. And so you've got the 10 days. It's the most exciting time in Calgary. It's amazing. But they wanted the building to feel like the 10-day festival year-round. So if you were to look at the architecture, I think you would see how exciting a piece of architecture can be when nobody's around. So whether you have 1 million people on site or 0 people, I think that's that me and we, not me too we. We have to design for both conditions. Quite complicated, but it's incredibly fun when we do it right.
Yeah, no, it really is. I want to go back, Jonathan, a little bit to you to talk a little bit about Nashville as well, and some of the things that you just mentioned with the river development opportunities. But I first want to ask you, it's kind of 2 parts. I first want to ask you a little bit about this transition from where a lot of the work originally in your life was in a virtual space, and how it's now transitioned fundamentally into a real life experience space. And I wonder if you could talk just a little bit about that, but then also, the way that, and Michael kind of mentioned this too, the way that sort of we're pulling threads outside of a building into a broader physical environment, right? As we think about kind of in the case of Nashville, obviously there's so much development that's happening. There's amphitheaters and live music venues and all the activity on Broadway, right? There's a new NFL stadium coming online. There's all this sort of activity and energy, but then we have these pockets, right, that can be developed, right? In that case, I think it's almost 100 acres, right, of development. And that's something that we're obviously very excited by in terms of like, how do we stitch together, great places that are urban and our districts, right? So I wonder if you could touch on that a little bit again, sort of like how you've kind of transitioned from the virtual to the real, but then thinking about more broadly the way that we think about broader district making.
So I was actually thinking, I went physical virtual, physical digital virtual, or physical digital and back to physical. So I started as a DJ in clubs. I was with one of the first foreign DJs in China, opening clubs around there. So that was physical spaces and throwing parties. I was an actor on stage. So I kind of went, I wanted to be more of a talent, and then I got stuck in knowing the business side. You get pulled into the business side, and everything went digital. So I think my happiest place, we did a pop-up in Nashville for Coco a couple of months ago with of Hall & Oates. Anyone know Hall & Oates? Right. So John Oates lives in Nashville, so he was nice. And a friend has a guitar shop called Carter Vintage Guitars. So we wanted to do like a pop-up experience as close as we could get to the Coco vibe in Nashville. So we did in a little speakeasy in the guitar shop, Epic Guitar Shop. And it's John Oates, 100 people, Mayor came, fun people, developed kind of this fun crowd. And I think getting to host that, and that, so my natural element, I think, is live, bringing people together. So it's nice to come back to it with the digital perspective. So I think from a Nashville perspective, and again, work with Universal Hotels and Coco, it's again the marrying where it's around the fan experience, where it doesn't start and end in one place. It's sort of this continuous experience that there are moments in the fan journey. Some of it, again, is getting excited and hearing about a new artist, which could be from radio, from a friend, from social media, from TikTok, and then it's kind of following, and then more, you find other people who also love the artist, then maybe you hit Live Nation or Access, and you buy a ticket. That could be another 3 months, and then you get excited. So it's like, how can you partner, and then you do, so with Universal Music, we've launched merch shops. So there's a cool one in London, we're going to do one in Nashville, Tokyo, New York. So for the first time, again, a music Universal. So we get your merch, Kuzi merch, you should be able to get soon. So it's a touch point, because usually merch was only around the physical experience of the concert, and now it's in between. And then these artist spaces, if artists are on tour, they can pop by. So we have one in Madrid. So it's kind of, again, catching the fan where they're not just having to catch the artist at a live show, but they can kind of, again, experience maybe around hotel and then the digital experience, then after. And also a lot of the fans are single. So it's always bugged me had invested in some, have a A-Force Ventures, have a fund that invests in female-founded companies. We did a bunch of dating startups and that human connection that a lot of people who go to live experiences are single, right? So we were working with Live Nation for a while where, why can't you check in? And if I'm interested in this band, that's a good way at least to find a connection with another person there, a guy or a girl, going, oh, we're at least into the same thing, we've spent money, and maybe then I see that, Susie's going to the next show that I wasn't thinking about going to, and then I might want to go to the next show anyway. So I think it's connecting the physical audiences and understanding what they're doing through the whole life cycle. So for Nashville, the exciting part, as you said, we've got a blank canvas. So there's, I think, 65 acres on the East Bank, south of Titans, next to TPAC, which is the new Performing Arts Center. So the plans are pretty cool and amazing. I think as you're talking about, it's conceiving what is the daytime usage, right? You know, and families and the riverside, and how does that blend into maybe like a TRL type experience? When I was in New York, we had, was it Carson Daly, for all the old people in the room, right? So you're having something that's live that you can go and hang outside, and then it pans to the fans, but it's much more family friendly, and maybe other iconic venues that we all know from around the world might be there in terms of the skyline. So I think, but thinking about it as a 360 utility experience that blends and extends the city and gives people, again, a reason to visit. We call it Nashville 5.0, and we see that Nashville can be on a level with Paris. They're thinking, where should we go worldwide? So that it's super exciting, blending all the things we're talking about to engage them before they come, while they're there, and give them something when they leave.
I love that. Well, we only have a few minutes left. I wanted to kind of tie it back to just really one of the broader themes of this gathering, and this idea of me to we, right? Going from singular to a collective experience. And what I'd like to do is just kind of throw it back to each one of you and tell us what that means in a few words, you know, in terms of going into this environment where we can bring people together for this collective experience. But why don't we start with you, Kuzi?
I'd say creating a safe space for people to be vulnerable, to yearn for connection and engage with one another, develop those deep-rooted moments in their lives, and party on.
I love that. Jonathan?
I think, again, with all the screens, you know, we're unfortunately getting more separated and isolated, and so I think we all have an opportunity in the room and around the world through entertainment and these amazing spaces to connect around these experiences and to find people that are into what we're into and to find community. And I think that will solve a lot of problems. It will get over political issues and diversity issues. I think bringing people together and giving them unique experiences is where the world is headed. So I think it's just a good thing for society, and it will be a great thing for people overall, bringing us together.
Shantell?
You know, to extend on that, I think, you know, me to we, it's just about giving people your attention, giving them a moment of presence. You know, we often find ourselves occupying the same spaces, and quite often, as busy people, we ignore people within our vicinity. And not that, like, you have to acknowledge everyone, but I think just me to we is just that acknowledgement of someone else's existence as well as your own existence. And so it might just be saying hi, it might be a gesture of kindness, it might be an acknowledge of someone else's presence.
Love that. Michael?
I'm going to steal a quote. The best way to predict the future is to design it. And so when we talk about creativity, I'm a big fan of words. I'm a big fan of creating a collective vocabulary. And so I think, to me, creativity is vulnerability. It's okay to be wrong. As much as we're all supposed to be experts and great at what we do, ask simple questions. What does that mean to you? What do you mean when you do that? What do you mean when you say that? What do you mean when you perform that? I just think that creates that bond. It does take it from me to we. It brings it to the collective. So I would like people to understand how creativity can take on many forms: drawing, spoken, listening. And that's really the tool that we should all use and lean into. I think it's easier than we think, but it's also a bit daunting to be vulnerable. So think of creativity as vulnerability and ask good questions and make good connections.
Yeah, I love that. I'll just say one last bit. I was recently in Australia. I was in Melbourne, and home to Taylor Swift's largest concert of her career. And we were preparing for an interview, and we're in Melbourne, in the Melbourne Cricket Ground, where her largest concert gathering ever was. And a couple days before, I stood in the stadium alone and just looked at 96,000 empty seats. And I thought to myself, what was that feeling like, right? To stand in that moment in front of close to 100,000 people. What was that shared experience like for that artist, right, and for that audience? People traveled from around the world to experience that together. And I think that's one of the most wonderful things, right, is we're doing what we're doing here today, right? We're gathering, we're sharing that moment together in a collective. And I'm so excited for where we're headed. So I want to just thank you all for being here today. Kuzi, Jonathan, Shantell, Michael, thank you all so much, and thank you all for being here.